You can see it's pretty messed up. And the weird thing is, sometimes you can make it look better. So we thought there was a connector problem, and I think there is, but we weren't able to actually fix it. We've already had the screen off so we can figure out the model number for the replacement that we picked up from laptopscreens.com. So the first thing we're going to do is just turn it off. So the first thing we have to do is remove the bezel. And it's not held on by any screws or anything. So you just put your fingernail in. If you look on the top, you'll see there's a bit of a crack. You put your fingernail in there and just run it along. And this is probably easier it may be easier for me now than it would be for you on the first time, because the first time always seems to be tougher. And as I say, we've already had this screen off, or this bezel off. I'm just going to keep running all the way around. So he says. And it just lifts out. And this particular screen has 1, 2, 3, 4 screws holding it in place. Those are the mounting brackets for this particular model of laptop screen. So we have our handy dandy little Phillips screwdriver here, and you can just see this wire comes up, and that's the main connector for the video. And there's another one that comes up in behind here, but that goes up in behind the screen. I think it might be for the Wi-Fi. So we're going to take those 4 screws out. These are very, very tiny screws, as you can see, and we have a bowl to put them in so we don't lose them. The other 3 here. So as I say, we had this screen off once before because we knew the behavior with it, you know, if you can push it and it sort of works a bit, we thought it was maybe just a loose connector. But we were pushing in here, and the actual connector's here. So it wasn't the main video cable and connector that was giving us a problem. And I should say that if your laptop has a warranty, doing this will void it. Quite possibly void it anyways. It was the case, this is a laptop from Eurocom, and if the actual removal of the screen didn't void I don't think voided the warranty, but as I'll show you in a minute, we did a bit more than that, trying to find a loose connection. So in addition to those 4 screws, there's tiny little rubber grommets that poke through a hole in each of those brackets. It kind of holds it in place even when there's no screws in it. So you kind of have to just pull it forward a little bit, and it comes free from those. But don't bring it too far because that connector is still on there. So we're just going to tip it up and pull, and actually we're going to look at the back. As you can see, or hopefully you can see it, I don't know, there's a bit of tape here. That tape is just there to help hold the connector in place. So we don't want to take the tape off the connector itself, so we just want to lift it up far enough that we can pull our connector out. And it's a very small connector, shouldn't require too much force, it just pops off. And there you have a screen that doesn't work so well. And we needed to take it off before anyways to get the model number to know what to replace from laptopscreens.com. But we thought there was a problem with the connector underneath here, so we peeled back the tape, which is easy to come off now because we'd already done it. And this is the connector here that we think is not working right, because it's right in here that we push and it actually seems to work okay. But there's no visible way. Actually, it's on the back. I think you can see it even better. No visible way of seeing any connectors there. You can see a bit of a ribbon cable that comes down, and it's sort of almost taped right on there. Whatever the problem is, it's in there, we think. So, out with the old screen. With the model number, we were able to go onto the laptopscreens.com, put that in, and choose our replacement screen, which came in 2 days, packaged like so. So from inside the box, we can see that the screen is actually packaged in 2 bubble wrappy envelopes. So we'll take one off and take the other one off. And my recommendation is the first thing you do is make sure that it is the right screen. And the best way of doing that is kind of just lay it over top of the original and see that it more or less covers it as a duplicate. And when I do that, you can see all the brackets line up, the size is good. And the screen looks quite glossy. It's meant to be a matte screen, but they've got a protective cover on here that's quite shiny. If I peel that back a little bit, it actually shows that it's a matte screen, which is what we ordered. So everything looked fine, and the last thing I checked, that I suggest you check, is that the connectors look the same, and they do. So we're going to move ahead with that. Put our old screen out of the way. And the first thing we're going to do is put our connector back on. You just want to make sure you get it all the way in. Sometimes a little easier said than done. So I'm just using my fingernail to just get behind the back of that connector and make sure it seats properly. And then I'm going to put that tape right back down to hold it in place. And you might be able to see here, there's a little piece of tape to help hold this wire in the right spot, and we're going to try to put that in the back in the right spot once we've got the screen remounted. But we want to make sure that wire doesn't get in behind. So we're just going to do it like that. So those 4 little rubber grommets I mentioned before, we're going to use those now to pop them through those brackets, and that'll hold that screen right in place. So I think what we'll do at this point, before we put the bezel on or even the screws, we're going to turn on the unit and just see that everything is working. So here we go. So now we can see with it powered on, the screen actually looks very nice. A couple of things showing our battery power and whatnot down there. And it all looks pretty good. So I'm going to put the screws in, and I'm going to pull this plastic covering off before we put the bezel back on. So I'm going to start the screws, and then we'll probably turn off the camera until we get them all in, because it's pretty boring to watch me do it. So we just put our last screw in. This screwdriver has just a little bit of a magnetic tip on it. It helps to hold the screw in place, especially when you're working with such tiny screws. That can be pretty helpful. And one other thing to pay attention to, don't over tighten these screws. There's not much to them, and they don't need to be super tight. You just want them to be more or less flush with the bracket and not loose. So we're just going to try each of them, make sure there's no looseness to them. Very good. And now we're going to pull that off. I'm not sure how easy that'll be once the bezel goes on. Probably not hard, but I don't want to make my life more difficult than I have to. Set that aside. So we want to make sure our cable gets back where it belongs, so we're just going to tuck it down there a bit. And with my finger, I'm going to just push that tape in there to help hold it in place. It's not very high tech, but it does seem to do the job. So we line our hinges up first, mostly. And we just kind of snap it back into place. If we've done our job properly, the case should just close fine. We shouldn't see any gaps. And we're done. But we'll turn it on and just make sure. And while that's booting up, I'll put my tools away. We're done. Thank you for watching.